Omkar? Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. So let me check. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this live webinar by Script Foundation Mumbai chapter. And I want to welcome each and every one of you, all the people who are watching right now. There are 10 people who are watching us. So I want to invite you all to this webinar. So this webinar is all going to be about serverless computing, and it's going to be delivered by Shantnu Agarwal. So let me just give a short info about what he does. Okay, so Shantnu Agarwal, he's a Microsoft Launch Student Ambassador for more than a year. Okay, and he's also the lead for Microsoft Launch Student Ambassador SRM community. Okay, so he runs Microsoft Launch Student Ambassador community in his college, and he's also associated with Samsung as a student researcher. So this is all about our speaker, and today is going to talk about guide you into the world of serverless computing. So without wasting further time, I just pass it over to Shantnu and let him continue. Okay, hello Shantnu, and thank you for like showing up here on our platform and talking, like interacting with our audience. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Omkar. Thank you. Thank you for the very nice introduction. And thank you for inviting me, Omkar, and Script Foundation. Let me just begin by saying that you guys have been doing a wonderful job over the past couple of weeks, having these sessions on YouTube, especially free of cost. That's really a great deed to the community. So we have a lot of people on chat. Sushil, yes, I am there on LinkedIn. I'll drop my links in a while. Let's quickly get started without dealing any further with the agenda that we have on hand. Okay, so I hope my screen is visible to everyone. Can you please check? Yes, thank you. Okay, so as Omkar very nicely introduced me, I'm Shantnu Agarwal. I'm a 2021 graduate, currently in my final year at SRM IST Chennai, and I will be interning at Bajaj Health in the next coming semester for a period of 6 months. Uh, and I've also been a part of the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors, and or we were previously known as the Microsoft Student Partners in the earlier branding since August 2019. So that's about more than a year now. And apart from that, I've been very active in a lot of other fields. I've worked on IoT devices. I've worked on robotics, OpenCV. I've worked pretty much on a lot of things, app development, cloud, especially cloud. That's all we are here today about, right? So that's enough about myself. Let's quickly get started with the topic at hand, serverless computing. So before we actually start getting some hands-on into this session, it would be good to have some basics cleared out beforehand. So the first thing that you should know about is what is an on-premises server. So I pretty much hope that you all know what a server is, but what is an on-premises server? There are different kinds of servers, right? So an on-premises server is something which you might have in your office space, in your backyard, in your garage. So basically, you are physically next to a server. You control what hardware resides in it. You control everything about it, and that server is completely physically private to you. So there are some advantages of having an on-premises server. First of all, it's high security. So since it's right next to you physically, you don't need to connect it over. You don't need to connect to it over an internet connection, thus making any security issues unlikely to happen. Like, unless someone was to hack into a local network, there is no security flaw in that. And there are some debatable cost savings if you don't know how to manage costs in other types of servers. An on-premises server is your best option. And obviously, like since it's located right next to you, you don't need an internet connection. So you're saving costs on internet bandwidth. So and finally, we have the custom design and control. So this fourth point is the most important one, perhaps. Why? Because you can design your own on-premises server as per your own needs. So suppose you are an app developer who needs a lot of storage. So you can build up and design your server to have a lot of hard drives and a good cache to serve as a database server. But suppose you are into high GPU computing or CPU compute units, you require that amount of thing that sort of things. You can modify your server as to your needs and add some commercial CPU units into it. So it's pretty customizable, and you have all the control and all the responsibility towards this server. Okay, but this is not obviously perfect, and that is why we have other types of servers. So we have a cloud-based server. So what is that? So a cloud-based server is basically a public offering offered by one of the many companies, for example, Microsoft, which offers Azure. We have Amazon that offers Amazon Web Services. Google offers Google Cloud Platform, GCP. IBM. There are hundreds of options. So these are basically company-managed cloud servers, and you connect to them via an internet connection. So all your clients connect to it via the internet, and you also connect to it via the internet itself. This addition of internet makes it a less secure environment compared to the on-premises server. So you would not be wanting to keep any private information that you have on the cloud server. Any business logic that you would typically have would be stored in a on-premises server. But we also have certain advantages of a cloud-based server. So that would include lower cost savings. If you know how to price it rightly, you can very easily control the cost to it. And obviously, since it's located physically in a different location than you are in, so if something was to happen to you or to your office space or to your any client, there is no risk of any database damage, any downtime in services, and most public cloud companies offer a 99.9% uptime. So it's very unlikely that your service is going down unless there is a flaw in your code. So we have all these perfect, almost perfect services available. So why is that we are needing a serverless architecture? What is the need behind it? What is the thing that on-premises and the cloud offerings are not able to fulfill, that we are ending up with a need for a serverless architecture? Okay, so let's imagine a scenario. We have we have a we have an IoT device that's basically a sensor. Let's say off the coast on a sea, which is supposed to monitor tides. So that's IoT device, that sensor will only send data when it hits a certain level. When the tide hits a certain level, at that point of time, an event will be triggered, and that device will send data to the server. Now, for this transaction to happen, this information exchange between the IoT device in the sea and the cloud-based or the on-premises server, you don't need to have the server running the entire time. You can just have the server run when the request comes or when the event happens. So this trigger-based running of the server ends up in saving you a lot of money, resources, and obviously it scales well. So let's proceed ahead. So let's also understand a very important thing here, how cloud billing works. So a very important thing in mind that you will keep and your company will be keeping is the cost and expenditure that they have to put in maintaining and scaling resources and infrastructure. So there are two kinds of billing modes. First, we have the reservation-based mode, and second, we have the pay-as-you-go or consumption-based mode. There are different names on it on different platforms. So let's talk about each of them one by one. So the reservation-based mode, or basically a monthly rental, is what you get on regular services. So like imagine we have a cloud server. We rent a small part of it. We rent dedicated resources. We rent, let's say, for example, we rent two CPU cores, we rent 250 GB of drive space and 4 gigabyte of RAM on the cloud server. Now, this hardware is yours to keep and it's yours to use as you see fit. As long as the hardware is able to meet your requirements, there's no issue in that. Your services will run perfectly fine, and you will pay a monthly fee, whether or not you are utilizing that entire two CPU units. You are using one, you are using two. It doesn't matter as long as it's under the limit. Same goes for the drive space. It's 250 GB is allocated to you. It doesn't matter if you're using 10 gigabytes or 100 or 250, the entire space. You pay the same amount always. So this kind of a model, this kind of a billing model is preferred when you are expecting, uh, when you are not expecting, and when you are not expecting a very drastic shift in um, workloads. So you know that this is what you will be requiring at max. So you pay for that amount each month. Or perhaps if you want to save cost, you can go about that and save money by paying it annually as well. But again, in the scenario which we had earlier of the IoT device being placed in the sea and sending data whenever tide hits a certain level, we don't need to have a computer running, a remote server running 24/7, do we? So this is where the pay-as-you-go system comes in. Here you don't pay with CPU resources, you don't pay with RAM or disk space, you pay with time. So the fundamental unit in a pay-as-you-go or a consumption-based model is time. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you are running for 10 seconds, if you're running a particular service, if you're running a Python app for 10 seconds, or you're running a Node.js app for 10 seconds, you only need to pay for those 10 seconds. Now, in that 10 seconds, it does not matter if you're having 100 requests coming in or 10,000 requests coming in those 10 seconds. This model is scalable, and the only unit of time and the only unit which serves as a measure of billing is the time. So for cases such as the one on the sea, the IoT device, this model is a very nice model, consumption based. It helps you save a lot of money, and it also scales very well. So some quick benefits. So depending upon the use case, if you put it to the right use, the pay-as-you-go model, it provides you cost savings. It auto scales to meet your demands, 100 requests, 10,000 requests, 1 million requests in 10 seconds. It doesn't matter. You are getting charged for your time. And being serverless, it helps you set it up and deploy it very quickly. So we have two very popular services running pay-as-you-go model with serverless computing, which are the Azure Functions and the AWS Lambda. So both of them are pretty stable as of now. They were not stable when they were launched earlier, but today, as of today, they are very scalable and function very well. We'll be going a little hands-on today, starting with Azure Functions. So let me quickly open up Azure. All right. So before we actually start using Azure, let me tell you about this Azure student offer, which Microsoft is providing to everyone. So you will be needing an Azure account to follow up with whatever I say, right? So we have a lot of offers for students and basic offers that can be redeemed by anyone. So the student offer, it gives you, it's free, so you don't need any credit card either for this, and they're giving you $100 to use. So these $100 you can spend on anything on Azure, and it's valid for a period of 12 months. And during these 12 months, obviously you have these $100 to use as well as this. Coupled with this, we also have a few services which are free throughout your duration of this subscription, which is valid for 12 months. So things like virtual machine units, 720 hours, 750 hours for that. SQL database, you have 250 GB of space in that, and a lot of other things which are there available for free. So all you need to activate this offer is your SRMIST account, which is for me actually. You basically need a .edu account. Hello, is there someone? Okay. Okay, please mute your mic. Who was there? Thank you. We also have a starter offer for students. This offer includes things like DevOps, etc. So you can check out these offers. Just Google Azure Student Offer, and it's very pretty simple and easy to set up. Okay, so coming to the Azure portal, portal.azure.com. Let's quickly start by setting up an Azure function. So this is the marketplace in case you guys haven't been to Azure before. So this is where you actually search whatever you want to create and set things up. So I'll quickly go over here and start with a function. So we see a function app, short description about it, which you can always read later on. And let's click on create. So I need to provide a resource group. I'll quickly set it up for myself. It's basically an expenditure monitoring system. And okay, so I'll give it a name, function app name. So this is basically your endpoint. If I write Shantnu Agarwal here, so it's basically Shantnu Agarwal .azurewebsites.net. So when this function is deployed on the cloud, I can access it. Its endpoint, basically what we call in technical terms, its endpoint will be Shantnu Agarwal .azurewebsites.net. We want to publish it using code and not a Docker container. Runtime stack, I'll keep it as Node.js. So we have options for .NET Core, Python, Java, PowerShell, anything. I'll start with Node.js version 12 LTS. That's fine. Region, I'll choose something which is near to me. I'm in India right now, so let's go with South India. Okay, so I have configured it properly. Let me check. Yep, Node.js version 12, South India, and we have the endpoint name there. Next, let's go hosting. So you will be needing a storage account for this. Storage account is it's not a dedicated account. It's just basically just it's a virtual drive space. So remember, you are not buying a complete server when you are using a function. You are going serverless, right? But your code still needs to be somewhere. Your log files need to be saved somewhere. So you need to connect a storage account to it, basically a virtual hard drive, which can be used to write data. So it's making a new one for me by default and giving it a strange name. Operating system, I'll just keep it as Windows, and plan type is consumption based serverless. So that is how you know that you are not going to be paying anything for this. It says serverless, consumption based. So unless and until you make a call to this function, you trigger an API call, you are not getting charged at all. Next, monitoring, you can enable or disable application insights. I'll keep it disabled for now. It's basically analytics for your cloud service. Tags, I'll skip that as well. Let it validate. Okay, we are all set. Let's hit the create button. Okay, now we just wait and watch while the deployment happens. So it's basically setting up the storage account, the virtual hard drive, and it is also setting up the Azure function, setting up the API calls, the parameters for it. And it usually doesn't take longer than 60 seconds for this to happen. Let's wait. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, keep them coming in the chat. I'm hanging out there as well. So if you have any questions, just let me know on the chat, please. I'll be answering them towards the end of this session. Okay, so now we know that the storage account is set up, the server farm is set up, and this is also the storage account itself. So you can monitor your progress. You can just go somewhere else, and it's always there in notification panel how much the deployment is going on. the progress is still shown there. Okay, wonderful. So our deployment is complete. Let's click on go to resource. Okay, so this is the interface for the deployed application control panel. You can say control panel. So we have some pretty basic insights over here. You can have some really advanced ones. If you enable application insights, that's for free. And see, we all count as a zero, so there's nothing going on right now. Working memory set is 0 bytes, so it's completely stopped. There's nothing going on. You're not paying for anything right now. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the URL that I have received. So if you go to this link right now, it's just a regular home page, a boilerplate which Azure has set up for me. So okay, we'll let this be here. No issues. So let's quickly go to the left side panel and see we have an option here called functions. So when you hit functions, you see that there is nothing here. It's an empty screen. We need to create our own function first. Let's click on add. The panel on the right is loading. Okay, so here we have some options available. Let me explain some of them to you. So the example case which I explained earlier regarding the IoT device placed in the sea, sending updates to the cloud whenever a tide hits it. So that is I call that a trigger. So when your server is not running 24/7, how do you tell the server when to run and when to not run? So this is called a trigger. The event which hits the server, it could be time based, it could be HTTP based, which tells the server that now is the time to run. You should get up from sleep and run now. So it could be an HTTP request or an API call, which starts the server every time a new request comes in. So when there are no requests, after a certain period of time, after a timeout period, it just dies down. You could also have a timer-based trigger. So, for example, I'll give you an example for this. So, suppose you have an SQL database. Now, you want a daily backup to occur twice. Oh, you want the backup to occur twice daily, at 9 a.m. in the morning and 9 p.m. in the at night, and you want to automate this process. So you can have a timer-based trigger and instruct it to run at those timings in the day, and at that time, automatically the server will start. It will fetch all the data in the SQL database, make a backup of it anywhere you want on a different database, or maybe email that to you. You can do that as well. So it's a timer-based schedule. So the server is not running all the time. It's running based on some trigger. So we have a lot of other things, an IoT device hub, a lot of things that you can actually explore for free using the student offer. For the purpose of this explanation, let's go with a simple HTTP trigger. So by default, okay, let's go with this HTTP trigger one function name, and I'm going to give it an anonymous authorization level. So basically, what this means is that from anywhere in the world, without authentication, can trigger this function and get successful result back. So I'm avoiding any authentication, which you should not be doing if you are using it in a production environment. This is just for testing purposes. So I'll go ahead with anonymous, create. The function is being created, as you can see in the top right corner as well. Oh, it was cancelled. Let me try again. HTTP trigger to wait. Should I refresh? Okay, yeah, it got made, but the message was clearly different. Anyway, so our function is now set up and it's enabled as well. Let's click on that. It takes you to the function homepage. On the left side, we have some pretty basic functionalities available. We can disable it. So suppose you want to disable it, then you can click on the disable button. We have an option for developers called code plus test, where supported languages like Node.js can be used to develop basically in the browser itself. and we have the integration functionality. Now, this is something which helps you visualize what is actually happening over here. So for this function that we just made, we have an HTTP function. So it explains you how it's actually being triggered and what the output is. So we don't have any inputs right now. An input would be basically a file from a database or an online storage account or an email trigger, anything. So we just have one trigger for this function right now, an HTTP trigger. So when HTTP trigger comes in, hits the function gets activated, and it sends an HTTP output as well. So you can click on output and have different kinds of output. You can add a file storage, HTTP. You can send another HTTP. Using SendGrid, you can send an email. Using Twilio, you can send an SMS. So there are hundreds of things that you can do by combining up everything. So let's get back to code plus test. Okay, so we have this boilerplate template ready here. So this is basically it's basically accepting a query. So if we are looking for a name in the request, and in that request, if we have a name, then that name is assigned to this variable. Otherwise, we just keep it blank. That's what this or and function is about for. So the logic behind this is that if we have a name field, it's a ternary operator. So we are checking if the name variable has any content or not. If name has a parameter attached to it, has a value attached to it, then it will just say hello XYZ, whatever the name is, this line. Otherwise, remember the ternary operator. So otherwise, it will just say that it triggered successfully and pass a name. So this is all too confusing. So let's just quickly test it out and let's see what the actual result is. So I hope all of you have heard about something called Postman. So Postman is a collaboration tool for API development. So basically, it helps you simulate an API request. You can download it and get it up for free. It's open source, so there's no worry for that. Postman, I'll quickly open it up. Okay, I'll need to stop sharing my screen and share it again. I'll share the entire screen actually. Okay, so here we are. Let's go back to Azure and let's get the function URL. We'll use the default key to authorize ourselves. We don't have any authorization. Remember, it's anonymous, so we don't need a key at all. So I'll just copy the URL as it is, and let's go to Postman. So in Postman, you can enter the URL here. So I'll paste what I copied there. So let me go back and explain one more thing which I forgot to explain earlier. So we have a lot of options here, right? So one of them is choosing the file. So by default, we are at index.js. If you go to function.json, it specifies basic properties about this function. So one of them to note here are the methods property. So methods property basically tells us which all methods are allowed for this function. So if we use a get request or a post request, this function will accept that. And suppose we're using a put request or something like that, it will not be accepted. So we can hit this function with a get or a post request, and the authentication level is anonymous, so we don't need a key for that. Let's quickly go back to index.js to the Postman file, and we can have a get or a post request. Let's go with get, and let's hit the send button. Okay, so a lot of things to note here. First of all, we have not attached any other parameter to this request. The only request, we just hit this direct URL without any data, without any authentication. And this is the response that we have received for this. So it says the function was triggered successfully, pass a name in the query string or request body for a personalized message. Okay, we'll do that in a second. I would like to bring your attention to this time field. Okay, so let me just zoom it a little bit. So it says here 604 milliseconds. 604 milliseconds is a lot of time when you are having an API call. So let me add a name parameter to it and follow it up with my name. And let me just send it again. So this time the output is different, obviously as per logic of the code. But the more important thing to note here is the time. So from 600 milliseconds, we are now down to 91. Excuse me. We are now down to 91 milliseconds. So why is this happening? What's the reason behind it? So what happens in a serverless architecture is that your server is not always running, right? So the first time when a request comes, when the server is sitting idle and a request comes, the server takes some time to get started, to boot up. You could call it a hard reset, basically. So a cold boot up, and it starts from a cold stage. So everything has to be loaded into memory, and then the request is evaluated, and then the reply is sent back. So this is one disadvantage that we have for serverless computing, is that if you are not if the function is not active all the time, in that case, the managing environment, the operating system running on the server, will remove your function or you remove your application from the cache. It will clear the RAM, and if and increase the latency, increase the request time for your request. So if you have a highly active application, that will not be the case, since you will always be having a request coming in and your function will not go out of the cache or the RAM. But if you have something like if you have a request coming like every 10 minutes, in that case, a request comes, it stays, it waits for another request for the next 1 minute, and for the next 9 minutes the server goes out of the RAM. So at the 11th minute, when the next request comes, it has to boot up again, and that takes a lot of time, and thus the added almost 6 times increase in latency. So, a strategy that developers use to save cost with Azure, with serverless technologies, and also at the same time avoiding any such delays, is that they automate this process. They send dummy requests to the server every once in a while, every 30 seconds, suppose. So, what happens with that is that so because of that, the server does not get loaded out of the RAM, and it is always available with a low latency. All right. So this was about setting up a server using a function app on Azure, and we just saw how we could trigger it using any API testing tool. If it works here, it will work on an app, and that's about it. You can actually explore this out on your own. You can integrate more things into it. It's pretty easy to use, and it's first of all it's very cheap, so you don't have to worry about getting large bills or anything about that. And you can always test and run it here itself. So one thing to note, which is different over here. So suppose you are a JavaScript developer, you know how to work in Node. We usually log statements using console.log, right? But in this particular case here, we have a context object. So everything that is being logged it goes to the context variable. So remember, this function is not the core of the system right now. It is being hosted by a cloud platform which has its own operating system and its own software managing all these functions that run on their servers. So you don't go with console anymore, you go with the context object. So that's all I had today for today. And if there are any questions in the chat, let me just know about it on the chat. I'll quickly. And meanwhile, who was asking, it was, I guess. Okay. So I'll quickly pull up some links. You can go visit this link and you will find a lot of things about me over there. I write blogs on things like these. You can find a blog written on Azure functions as well over there. And you can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter. We have all the links on there on the social.html link. And I see we have some questions on chat. Okay, so Himanshu over here is asking that are there some extra benefits of Azure Functions over AWS Lambda? Okay, Himanshu, so one second. Yeah. Okay. No, there are no specific benefits of Azure Functions over AWS Lambda, but since they are basically the same thing, AWS came up with Lambda before Azure came up with Functions, and they have been doing it for long, but Azure has covered up all of those deficits that they had in the past, and it's now much more versatile. And one big advantage that I would say Azure has over AWS in this regard is the infrastructure. So in countries in countries located in Asia and Africa, Microsoft Azure has a lot more infrastructure available and servers available, and that compared to AWS and even GCP for that matter. So, taking for example India itself, so Azure has servers located in West India, Central India, South India, and we have Southeast Asia as well. So all of these are very closely located to India and within India itself. So that provides a very high latency and allows you to follow the data laws as well. Okay, so Sheil is asking difference between Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services. Sushil, so okay, it totally depends on you, whichever you want to use. There is no difference in implement. There will be a little slight difference in implementing the your code to these technologies, obviously, since their methods are different. But overall, if you compare cost and features, everything that one offers is also offered by the other. It totally depends on on your stack. So if your project that you're working on is something related to let's say SQL, or you are using Cosmos DB. In that case, you would want to pursue with Azure because it offers native integration for that. And SQL is also provided free of cost with app services on Azure. So that totally depends on what you are trying to achieve with your project or your company is trying to achieve with their offerings. How to choose between Azure and web services or other companies for that matter. Uh, Again, Sushil, it's not about choosing. It's not about what how they differ. It's basically comes down to the project that you are working on. So some companies have a better reputation of working in some fields, and other companies have a better reputation for other fields. So I'll give you another example for this apart from an application. Let's go with translate APIs. So if you want to use a translation API, we all know that Google is a champ in that area, and their speech API is one of the best that we have. Even if you want to write a mixed language, suppose you want to type Hindi and English in the same sentence and ultimately translate into English. In that case, IBM APIs and the Azure Bing API will not be able to help you out with that, but the Google APIs will help you out with that. So it comes down to your project, what your project is trying to accomplish, and which of these companies offer a better result for a better cost for these particular requirements. Okay, do we have any other
Yeah,
questions
that's
on
great,
that?
yeah, yeah. We'll wait for another 5-10 minutes. If anyone has any questions, she can comment in the chat.
Yeah, and you all have the certificate form in chat box, so please make sure if you've registered for this workshop to get your certificate using the link in the chat. Okay, so
Himanshu, can
Himanshu is
you check
asking.
it? Dheeraj, can you check the form once? Now it's opening. Yeah, we can continue with Himanshu's question.
Yeah. So Himanshu was asking, can we automate the Azure functions? Okay, so let me just go back to Azure and show you about these triggers. Yes, so we have a lot of options to trigger a function. So if you have something like a timer trigger, you can have it run every 10 seconds, every 20 seconds, every 2 hours, every 10 days. So if you couple Azure functions with other Azure functions, you can practically automate functions at a very low cost. So if you want to uh, automate some other type of function, you can make a timer function. You can make a timer based trigger, and that timer based trigger can hit some other function which is doing a different thing. So you can trigger. Okay, let's go with Azure Blob Storage trigger. So Azure Blob Storage is basically a file storage. So suppose you are uploading files to a database from an application. You have a mobile app, and whenever someone uploads a file, you want something to happen to it. You want an antivirus check to be run on the file whenever any file is uploaded to your application, and you are storing that file in the Azure Blob Storage. So you can automate this process as well. So a trigger will be executed whenever a new file comes in, and then you can decide what you want to do. So okay, so let's try to make this a little bit more clear. If you guys have worked with GitHub Actions, or if you have worked with webhooks, or even in an RSS feed. So these all of these things work on the same principle, which is a trigger. So let's say for GitHub Actions, you make a commit on GitHub, and GitHub Actions will, based on the trigger that okay, the commit has happened, it will do this. It will do the required processing. And same goes for the RSS feed. Whenever you update an RSS feed with a new entry, it triggers an event on the RSS feed, and all noted recipients receive a message that a trigger has happened, a new item has been added to it. So that's how we use applications like these. If are there any other questions?
Yeah,
Thank you for those nice
Shantanu.
words.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I was about to say that Sushi commented
Yeah,
like, "Thank you." It was yeah. So, also, I can see in the feedback form, a lot of
hmm,
people are have responded like really enjoyed the session. Okay, and I'm seeing the responses. A lot of people are saying it was very informative, superb session, and nice informative session. I
yeah,
was first time learning about serverless computing, and it was quite helpful, informating, learn new things. I will highly recommend this video for beginners. Script Foundation really knows how to explain basic things in an easy way. Yeah, so all the credit goes to what you can say. All the credit goes to Shantanu
Script
because
Foundation. You guys,
also Script Foundation, but
yeah,
yeah, but all the credit goes to Shantanu because it's his knowledge and he is able to share it with all of you. And we are just a platform here. We are just connecting you with connecting him with you all. Okay, and that's a really good what you can say a webinar we kind of had on a weekend. Okay, so on a weekend we learned something, and that is really nice.
yeah.
Yeah. So we
Thank you
have
all
another
for showing up
question.
on Sunday.
Uh, Yeah, we have another question from Arun Sai Reddy. He's asking
Yeah.
uh, the advantages of serverless computing.
Okay, I guess I answered that earlier as well, but no worries. I'll just repeat it again quickly. So, serverless computing, it basically helps you save costs, and helps you scale up instantly. So, in a regular server, you are either paying a fixed amount of money all the time, or you are paying money for the services that you are using. So suppose you're using 10 gigabytes of 10, you are using 10 gigabytes of bandwidth. In that case, you are paying for those 10 gigabytes. But on a serverless model, you are paying by the concept of time. Your unit of payment in a serverless model is not resources, it is time. So if your application is running for 10 seconds, you are getting billed for 10 seconds only. It doesn't matter if during those 10 seconds you processed 1000 gigabytes of data, or you had 1 million incoming requests and outgoing requests, or just one or two requests. It doesn't matter. uh, the scale of resources being used at that point doesn't matter. Only the time which is being used by your function, that matters. So you are being billed for the computation time that you rented. And yeah, that is basically the main advantage of having a serverless model. But if you think that you can avoid a rental based solution and have a function running 24/7 using a serverless model, then that is also not actually correct. If you have a server running 24/7, suppose you have a very popular website or an application which is being used all the time, in that case, it is always better to go with the reserved model, because the costs of serverless is such that when you pay for like 365 days of continuous usage, the total amount goes above and beyond what you would pay if you had paid for it monthly. So you need to be wise when choosing an option when you are setting up your cloud functionalities. You need to be wise enough to decide how much of computation time will the application be using on the cloud. If it's less, then you can definitely go with serverless model and save money. But if your application is like active, like say 60-70% of the time, then I would suggest that you go with rental based or subscription based model, like paying for a month or paying for a year in advance. Thanks, Yash. Thank you for those nice words. He's saying that it was really interesting. Thanks.
Actually, we have one more question here, so can you
Okay.
just take it?
Okay. Can you share your experience as a Microsoft Learn student ambassador? Okay. Something very close to heart. Uh, so I've been a Learn ambassador since August 2019. That's about 13 to 14 months. And during this time, I have grown personally and professionally both. So the biggest benefit that this program offers to all students is the networking that you are able to do with other students also pursuing similar interests, and with professionals who are already working in the industry itself. So I would say that okay, yes, Microsoft does provide you with perks and benefits. They provide you with goodies, and they provide you with Azure subscriptions, 10,000 rupees approximately per month of subscription money, not actual money. So yes, all those things are very helpful personally if you are working on projects, if you are working on new technologies, and you don't want to spend your own money. So you get a lot of time learning, and the community is very nice. There are a bunch of beautiful people who are there to help you out all the time. We have a lot of internal events. We have the AI gaming event, and things like we have leagues these days. So it's a pretty engaging community of people who want to learn. And Microsoft also tries their best to um, increase the learning that is being offered in the program. We have access to LinkedIn Learning, and we the Microsoft Learn platform is absolutely great. So one more thing that I would like to add to this session, like if you want to learn more about serverless computing, if you want to learn about anything related to Azure, you can go to Microsoft Learn. So Microsoft Learn is a completely free tutorial-based website, and there are no videos on it. Like if it's not like Coursera. It's somewhat like a documentation come tutorial. So they guide you through everything, and we have a lot of free um, uh, a lot of free learning paths and modules available over there, which will explain you in detail about everything. And you can also get a certification in Microsoft Azure, which really helps you out in your professional life. And yeah, Sushil, I would recommend that if you think you are good with the community, if you want to contribute more towards the social responsibilities, and be a proud student, you can definitely apply for the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors. The applications are open 24/7 each day, and a simple Google search for that will give you the application link as well. Yeah, it's there on chat. Thanks to Script Foundation for that. So you can definitely apply for this. We have applications open all the time, and results are always announced every quarter. So the next cohort of student ambassadors will be announced in January first week. I would really recommend that you apply there and be a part of this awesome community.
That's great,
Hmm.
Shantanu. And what you just shared, that is really nice. I'm also in a like student learn ambassador, and that's quite a lot of bunch of experiences where you get to learn a lot, meet a lot of new people, interact with ambassadors from other colleges, okay, and do events, okay. So that is where you get to like what do you say, explore a lot. And
Yeah.
Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador is the right program to start with if you want to start with something in your college. It's the best thing one can do.
Yeah, I agree. I
It's
totally
great.
agree with you.
Yeah. So that's amazing. And yeah. So we right now I guess we don't have any questions yet. So I think all of the people are cleared with the concept of serverless computing. So we'll just end this session, and I want to again thank you for coming here and like taking a webinar on serverless computing. It was really helpful. A lot of people will like we have 12 people watching right now. So those 12 people, even those are 12 people will get benefited from this webinar. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your valuable knowledge. And yeah, we at Script Foundation, we respect such people who are enthusiastic about sharing their knowledge, sharing what they have in hand with the people for the benefit of the society, community, and that's really great. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Omkar. Thanks for having me here today. Thank you, Script
Yeah,
Foundation.
and to the people who are watching us right now, I want to tell you we come up with such webinars every week, so make sure to subscribe to our channel. Also follow us on all the social handles. I guess that I have mentioned our LinkedIn page link. Okay, and I have also mentioned Shantanu's LinkedIn profile link, so you can both check it out. You can connect with Shantanu on LinkedIn, and you can ask him questions. He's happy to help you. He's there to help you guys. So do connect with him. Do follow us on all the social media platforms you have, and we'll see you guys in another webinar. And for today, that's all. And we'll see you guys in the next webinar. Have a nice day and happy learning.
Thank you.